Well, we're back at the Wendover military base, the Wendover Army Airfield.
Right. What a mouthful.
What a mouthful. This week we're going to be looking again at the N-scale FREMO, the FreeMoN event that's going on there. But we want to show you the Flightline and the rest of the Air Force Base, or Army Air Corps field,
right.
I guess would be the proper description for it.
Right.
So check this out. It's really quite interesting.
It is.
Well, we're back at the FREMO event.
Yeah, we are.
If you don't know what FREMO is, it's a group of people who come together, each with their own little small module, and they all hook together following the rules of FREMO.
Oh.
So that they all connect together properly.
Right.
And they had this meeting at the Wendover Airfield, the old World War II, and here's a link to last week's show on that. But Wendover's in the middle of the well, it's at the edge of the salt.
The edge of the salt flat.
The western edge of the salt flats, the Great Salt Flats, and just this vast expanse of hard salt.
Right, out in the middle of nowhere.
And it's interesting because if you get out onto the actual hard pan part of this thing, it's harder than asphalt.
Oh yeah, it looks like somebody did a lunar landing there.
Boy, I'll tell you. And that's why they race cars out here.
Right.
Is because it's like hundreds of miles of hardened asphalt out here. But we come out here quite often.
Oh, it's fun to go out there.
It's just fun. It's in our backyard, so
right.
Why not?
Exactly. But wear sunscreen.
Wear sunscreen. Yeah, the sun comes from both above and below when you're out here.
Yeah, every direction.
They used to fly model rockets out here, and here's a link to that. That was really fun and interesting. They don't do that anymore. Another interesting thing out here is that it's right on the Utah-Nevada border. And back when the interstate highways were privately owned, one of the great highways that was built back then, the Victory Highway, starts right here in Wendover, and they put an extension off of the Lincoln Highway to reach the Victory Highway at Wendover.
That's cool.
And that was a really big deal in its day. But it's interesting that our interstate system was originally privately owned by investors. It was also a stop on the Western Pacific Railroad.
Check out that train. That's cool.
This is at the airfield.
Is it?
Right here at the station at the airfield. But the Western Pacific had the gutsy idea to run their tracks right through the middle of the salt flats.
Hey.
Instead of around one way or the other, they brought their tracks right across the center. And that meant that the western edge of that was right here at Wendover.
Isn't that neat?
And so one of the reasons that the Army decided to build their airfield here was that there was a terminal with the railroad, so they could get their supplies in and out, because it is the middle of nowhere.
Right, and I can't think of a better way to get supplies in and out.
And I can't think of a better place to train people on how to drop bombs.
Exactly.
And so they had everything they needed. Vast open space, way out of prying eyes, and with a railroad terminal.
Right.
Everything they needed right here.
Right.
And it was a huge, huge base. With the usual stuff that goes along with a great big huge base.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh man, recreational oasis, huh?
But try to entertain troops, because in the middle of nowhere they got nothing to do. Anyway, the FREMO event is right here in one of the old surviving buildings.
They've done a wonderful job on restoring this. My goodness.
Well, maybe not most, but a lot of the original buildings were just left untouched.
Oh.
Anyway, the military didn't tear anything down. They just turned it over to the locals and said, you can have it. Now, right next to the FREMO event is an atomic bomb.
Isn't that crazy? That one.
Excuse me. This is a replica of the bomb that was dropped on Hiroshima.
Wow.
Because this is where the 509th Composite Group, the atomic group that dropped the atomic bombs, trained
right
expressly to drop atomic bombs.
Right.
And America's entire nuclear arsenal was stored here in total secret
Right.
at this Air Force base,
Right.
or actually Airfield,
Right.
because there was no Air Force back then.
That's right. The base is totally inland, so it's not on a coast. And if somebody flew in to, say, drop a bomb on it from another country, they would be well aware of it.
Well, and it's in the middle of nowhere.
Exactly.
So there are no prying eyes.
Exactly.
We're 100 miles from the nearest city of any kind.
Right.
In a desert.
In a desert, yep.
So the 509th could train out here in total secrecy. They then shipped out to the island of Tinian and took 2 of the atomic bombs with them, known as Fat Man and Little Boy, and using 2 of the airplanes from their wing, the Enola Gay and Boxcar,
Right.
dropped these 2 atomic bombs on Japan. This is the base on Tinian.
Right.
Now, while these airplanes have nose art, and we know their names, back in the day, they had no nose art.
Right.
It wasn't added until after they flew their missions, and in most of these cases until well after the war.
Right.
That's one of the reasons why the Enola Gay has such simple nose art. It wasn't painted on there until the evening before the mission.
Right. And Enola Gay was the name of his mother.
Yeah. The planes that the 509th were flying were the B29s.
Yes.
The newest super heavy, the Super Fortress,
The Super Fortress, yes.
built by Boeing,
Right.
and the flagship of the Army Air Corps,
Right.
capable of carrying massive loads and flying at very high altitude,
Right.
which was key to avoiding being blown up by your own bomb.
Right. This particular B-29 Super Fortress, they stripped that way down. They had hardly any identifying marks or much on them. That was to accommodate the weight of the bomb so that they didn't have to stop and refuel or anything. They could fly straight where their target was.
Yeah. Now this one is the other plane, Boxcar,
Right.
which was flown by Chuck Sweeney.
Yes.
And Fred Bach, it was Fred Bach's airplane, but on the day of the mission it was flown by Chuck Sweeney, and I know that sort of throws people off. That the morning of the mission they traded airplanes.
Oh, really?
Well, Sweeney's airplane was loaded with all the scientific equipment, and rather than move the equipment around, they just moved the crew. So they loaded the second bomb into Boxcar. Notice the nose art.
Yes.
It shows a mushroom cloud rising over Nagasaki to the left and the skyline of Salt Lake City on the right,
Isn't that interesting?
because Fred Bach lived in Salt Lake City.
Yes.
While he was stationed there at Wendover, he kept an apartment in Salt Lake because, well, Wendover,
Not much going on there.
not much going on. And even though it was a 2-hour commute, he preferred to spend as much time as possible in his apartment in Salt Lake City.
Right.
So the nose art depicts the plane being flown from Salt Lake City to Nagasaki.
Wow.
Now, because the nose art wasn't added until after the war, some people have said the names of the airplanes were also changed, and the Boxcar was originally called Paradise Lost.
Oh,
This plane was called Necessary Evil,
yeah.
and that brings up that subject of the morality of dropping atomic bombs.
Right.
And but the decision to do this was Harry Truman.
Right.
There was a sign on his desk that said, "The buck stops here."
Exactly.
And any criticism of the crews or anybody else involved in this, your complaints should be directed to Harry Truman, not the flight crews.
Right.
Now, this is interesting. One of the modules at the FREMO
Right. Look at this.
is actually an N-scale model of part of the base.
I think that's just cool.
It's a beautiful model by Kevin Anderson. And he did a tremendous amount of research to get these structures and the proper airplanes and the proper hangars, and really knocked this thing dead. This is a beautiful model.
It is.
It depicts the original train station here, which still stands,
Yes, it does.
and we found it.
Yes.
But it's very, very interesting module that he's put together here of the Wendover, the Army Air Corps airfield at Wendover. Now, while Wendover is best known for the 509th, a lot of different air wings trained here.
Exactly.
And B-24, B-25, and again, getting the research correct to put the right airplanes in the right hangars. But this was a huge facility.
Oh, it was.
His schedule's weird.
My mom always told all of us that my grandpa is one of the construction workers that built this place.
Oh, really?
So Adam just got divorced.
So we took some time and just toured the base.
Right.
It's all a museum now.
It is.
And this is the B29 hangar.
Right. They're really working hard to restore that.
Yeah, it's a beautiful project. It's the far end of the flight line, but the entire flight line is intact.
That is neat.
And it's all being restored. Here's the inside of the B-29 hangar, often called the Enola Gay hangar, because certainly the Enola Gay spent some time in here,
Right.
as did all of the B-29s
Exactly.
from the 509s. There's a lot of airplanes being restored here. There's just a tremendous amount of just really interesting stuff going on.
Right.
And as we mentioned, the entire World War II flight line is intact.
That is just, it blows my mind.
It blows my mind because the Army just walked away and gave it to the city and said, use it as an airport.
Right.
Have fun with that. And they didn't really have any money to tear anything down or change anything, so they just kept using it. just like it is.
Right.
And that means that we're all fortunate to have this incredible facility pretty much intact from 1945.
What a slice of history.
Wow, no kidding. Now, most of these spaces are not open to the public.
No.
But we've been very fortunate to get access
Right.
to the entire flight line and the inside of some of these hangars that are being rebuilt. They're currently being used for just private aviation,
They are.
but they're also being worked on. But again, if you come out here to see the museum, this is going to be off limits. We were
Right.
just super, super fortunate that
Yes.
they took us in here.
Right. And obey all signs when you do go out there. If it says no trespassing, they mean it.
This is kind of an unusual thing. This was used in the movie Con Air.
Man, I'm surprised that ever got off the ground, to be honest.
No kidding. I don't know that it'll ever get off the ground again. Now, this was a really neat jet out on the flight line.
It got our attention.
What a beautiful, privately owned,
Right.
and it's painted for the Blue Angels. But I'm not sure. I don't think this was ever actually this type of jet was ever flown by the Blue Angels.
We're not sure about it either, so.
So if you know anything about this, jump into the comments and let us know, because we've been unable to find out. But I don't think that style of airplane was ever actually flown by the Blue Angels. We could be very wrong about that.
Right, but it's sure a neat plane.
Oh, it's gorgeous.
Right.
Now, the interiors of some of the buildings have all been fixed up and are part of the museum, and you can go in there.
Right.
And it's just really neat to see some of these displays and exhibits. The Norden bomb site.
Isn't that wild? Wow.
The history of just this bomb site. I've always heard about it,
Right.
but it's a rare treat to actually see one on display. You got this shot,
I tried to get the crosshairs in there. That is hard to do.
but you were able to get a photograph down through the eyepiece, seeing the actual
Right.
crosshairs.
Right, there it is.
And then navigation tools.
Right.
But they've got all kinds of things that were used in that day. And this sign signed by General Tibbets. He was Colonel Tibbets at the time that they flew the missions. He was General Tibbets when he signed that. And this wonderful newspaper announcing the end of the war with a picture of Dwight Eisenhower,
Yep.
General Eisenhower.
Yes.
Now here's a miniature of the airfield during the war. Look at all the different structures that were there.
Just mind-blowing how many structures there were.
There were 20,000 men stationed here.
20,000. That's a lot of men.
20,000 people training as flight crews. It's mind-boggling. And a lot of the structures have simply fallen down and have fallen into disrepair, but some of them are still here. barely,
Right.
but still standing, and there's a hope to restore a lot of these structures that are still here. Now, back at Garage Mahal, we have our own little shrine to the 509th and the Wendover Air Force Base. And that's this pinball machine.
Isn't that neat?
Isn't that neat? This is from the base.
Right.
And it's kind of a long story how we acquired it. And here's a link to a movie about how we acquired it. But this was one of the pinball games on the base after the war.
Right.
In the 1950s.
Right.
Now, something else we have here is this book by Paul Tibbets
Right.
about his life and the mission of the Enola Gay.
Wow.
Now, I was on a film crew on a film by Casey Williams, and in 1990 we came out to Wendover to the reunion of the 509th.
Oh, neat.
And all of the surviving members of the 509th were there.
Oh, that is wonderful.
And I got to meet Paul Tibbets, and I picked up this book from him. And then I had several of the different guys autograph it.
That's really neat.
So here's the Navigator, the Bombardier, and Colonel Tibbets himself. Again, General Tibbets when I met him. And then this is Chuck Sweeney, Charles Sweeney, the pilot of Boxcar.
Boxcar.
And the Nagasaki mission. But that was really really an honor meeting these guys, and ending up with their pinball pinball game.
Isn't that weird? And it's just wild that we did that. Likes that middle highway. He loves the middle highway. Down the middle of the road.
Down the side.
Oh, that's always a fun one too.
You don't get anything down the side. At least you get points for the middle.
Right.
We acquired the pinball game just 5 years ago?
Yeah, something like that.
From Dennis McBride.
Right, he had it.
And his father got it out of the Air Force Base when he was out there doing race cars at the Salt Flats, and they were keeping the race cars in the Enola Gay hangar.
Oh dear.
And when he left, well, he took the Coke machine and the pinball game and a bunch of other things.
Right.
And it all ended up at McBride's wrecking yard. And when I found it there, I talked Dennis McBride into swapping it for a Paxton supercharger
There you go.
for his T-Bird.
There you go.
And now here it is in Garage Mahal.
That's neat.
And we fixed it up and got it working.
Right. Oh, it's going to go down the wrong alley. Oh, no.
And you may have noticed there's a couple of jukeboxes here too.
Right, they're out of the bars over there in Helper, right by the Rio Grande.
Yeah, all the trainmen used to stop in.
I'll bet.
Anyway, this was really fun. The FREMO event at the Wendover Airfield.
Right.
A lot of people say Air Force Base. No, Army Airfield.
Mm-hmm.
And hanging over the entire event was this American flag.
Isn't that neat?
And what history.
Oh man, it still makes my heart skip a beat.
This was the flag flying over the base while the 509th was training here.
Right.
And while the atomic bombs were being dropped, and both VJ Day and VE Day, the end of World War II.
Right.
Seeing the flag always makes both of us proud to be an American.
Right, especially if you've had parents or family that served in the armed forces.
Exactly.
There's times on social media where people will refer to it as my flag.
And it is no one person's flag.
Right.
It is our flag.
Right. The United States of America, we the people.
We the people. It represents all of us, and it should be referred to not as my flag, but our flag.
Right.
E pluribus unum.
Right.
Well, that was really neat.
It was.
I love that base.
It was breathtaking.
That airport, that air... Yeah. And you can walk all over that base, too.
I
Yeah.
did.
And you did. But I love any old facility that's kind of falling apart. And, but that's just what history.
Phew, yeah.
Geez, what history.
Yeah, it takes your breath away.
Takes your breath right away. Well, anyway, if you haven't been over to the channel, and if you're not a subscriber, please go over to the channel, or at the very least, do subscribe. You can also like and share and all those kinds of things.
Right.
But if you're not a subscriber, it's real easy to subscribe. All you have to do is click on the upcoming blue button.
Right.
Are we ready? Zoink! Right there, the blue button. Well, we're not sure how you found this video on the internet. We hope you didn't find it boring, and we will see you here on Tuesday. See you then.
See you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.